There, this is Lauren Kimball for ANI 245, and I am recording this tutorial remotely from California since I won't be in the classroom to help you put together a quick animatic to pitch for your final project. So I'm going to use these thumbnails from Cats Don't Dance and this audio clip here from Cats Don't Dance, and we're going to break them up into Photoshop and then export them into Premiere Pro. We're going to begin by opening up Adobe Photoshop. And in Photoshop, go to New. And this is an older version of Photoshop, but even if the menu is a little different, you should still be able to come up with the same file types and aspect ratios. And the preset that I'm going to go for is Film and Video. And I'm going to choose the Film and Video aspect ratio that matches the Playblast settings that you export from Maya. So typically, I like the HD 720, and I'm going to press OK. And what happens is Photoshop will create a Photoshop document canvas that matches, that film aspect ratio. And typically in the newer versions of Photoshop, there'll actually be active guides, like little blue rulers that show up that tell you where the safe action and the safe title areas are. So if you don't see them on my screen, it's because this particular laptop has an older version of Photoshop. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and open up, minimize this, and I'm going to open up my thumbnails into Photoshop. I'm just going to drag and drop them into Photoshop like so. Zoom in. And what I want to do is use my marquee tool, which is the hotkey M, and I'm going to select each individual panel. It doesn't matter if the panels necessarily fit the aspect ratio of your document. What matters is that you are able to just lay them out. The reason that I'm choosing a document that matches the Playblast as opposed to the thumbnails, so that if you're having issues exporting audio from your Maya file, you'll be able to go back and open up your Premiere profile that you're using for this animatic. And sorry for the interruption. The recording device on this laptop only lets me capture little clips, so I'm going to try to be briefer. Basically, if you have issues exporting the audio out of Maya, you can bring your Playblast into Premiere Pro and export that way, which is why I went ahead and had you go ahead and use the 720 aspect ratio. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and take each of these thumbnails, go back to the main document, use my marquee tool, grab the next panel, copy it, which is Command-C on this Mac, but Control-C on the PC, and I'm going to go ahead and paste it. And I'm going to go ahead and scale it using Free Transform. That's Control-T. If I hold down Shift, that constrains it so that I'm not, squashing and stretching my panel. And I'm essentially taking each of these thumbnails, and also deselect is Control-D. I'm taking each of these thumbnails and I'm putting them on their own layer inside of Photoshop. So I'm not going to do that with every single panel. I'm just going to do it with a couple. You'll want to do it with all of it, but for the sake of brevity, I'm going to just stop here. And when you're done, go ahead and save the document to your desktop. I'm going to call this Cats Thumbnails. And make sure it is a Photoshop document. That is important. And go ahead and save. When you're done saving your thumbnails out in Photoshop, you need to go ahead and open up Premiere Pro. Again, this layout may be a little bit different based on what version of Premiere Pro you're operating with, but you are going to begin with New Project. All this information down here you can kind of ignore. It's not really pertinent to this project, but over here on the name, you do want to name it. In this case, I'm going to call it like Cats Animatic. And all this other stuff can, again, not really important. But under Location, you want to make sure that you set it to your desktop so that you can find it. I'm going to press OK, override a version I did earlier, that's fine. Alright, inside of Premiere Pro, you've got several windows to work with. Again, some of these are going to look a little different based on your version of Premiere Pro, but the base of it is going to be the same. This window up here in the left, let's go ahead and go to editing mode. If you're in editing mode, this should be what it looks like. This window right here that's blank on the left is going to control your source clips, so anything you bring into Premiere Pro, you're going to see right here unaltered. Over here you have the viewport that shows you what's playing in the timeline. Down here, your project bins, you can think of this as your layers in Photoshop or your outliner in Maya. These are your tools in the toolbar right here, and then lastly in this blank window here is your timeline, which we don't have any content yet, so nothing shows up. To import our thumbnails, I'm going to have you double click on the project bin right here. You could also go File, Import, but that's just the quickest way. I'm going to go ahead and click on my thumbnails Photoshop document, and I'm going to click on Import. When you open up a Photoshop document inside of Premiere Pro, you're going to get this window right here. First thing, go under Import As and ask for individual layers so that it's going to break down each of these images into their own asset. I'm going to uncheck background because I don't necessarily need that white background. Footage dimensions, same as document size, and press OK. When you do that, you're going to have a folder in your project bin. Double click it, and you'll see that all of your animatic thumbnails will pop up. Each of these have the same aspect ratio, and so what I'm going to have you do is click on any one of them and drag it over to this icon down here at the bottom of the bin window. This little icon you've probably seen before. It looks like the corner of a page that's been turned upward. That's the new icon. If I were to just click it, it gives us a whole slew of options that allow you to create different assets inside of Premiere. What we want it to create is a sequence or a timeline sequence that will match the aspect ratio of your thumbnails. So what you essentially need to take away from this is to just grab a thumbnail and drag it over the new. When you do that, it'll throw that thumbnail into your timeline, and as you can see, the aspect ratio matches the thumbnail. Otherwise, if you weren't to do that and you just click sequence, then you would have to go through and try to find the 720 aspect ratio setting. This is just a cool shortcut. So next, I'm going to double click on my bin and bring in my audio. You're going to want to drag and drop this audio into the timeline. Just click it and there it goes. Drag it in the audio. By default in Premiere, your sequence is going to have 3 audio clip layers and 3 video clip layers, or in this case, thumbnails. I'm going to go ahead and delete that thumbnail, and I'm going to just play the audio real quick.
Did I hit a sour note?
Okay, did I hit a sour note? I'm going to click on my cat thumbnails, and I'm going to look for, did I hit a sour note? Let's see what we got here. Oh, there it is. It's this one. When I find the thumbnail I want, I'm going to drag it into my timeline. As you can see, this particular thumbnail is much longer than where I want it to cut off. There are 2 ways that I can shorten this thumbnail to align with the audio. First is I could just grab the edge of the image and drag it and then stop it right there where that portion of the dialogue ends.
Did I hit a sour note?
Okay. A second way to do it, let's go ahead and go on to the next thumbnail, which is the word note. The character Danny says note. Rewind it.
Did I hit a sour note?
Alright, let's say I wanted the clip to end right there. I could shrink it down, or I could press C, which the C key will have this little razor blade appear. That's the cut tool. And you can cut it right where you want the audio to stop. Press V, that's the hotkey for select, and click the remainder of the clip that you don't want and press delete. And now when we play it back,
did I hit a sour note? Wait.
I think that should probably hold a little longer. Let's try again.
Did I hit a sour note?
Right, so I found the Can I Hit a Sour Note card. I'm going to drag that into my scene right there.
Did I hit a sour note? Wait, because if I hit a sour note.
Alright, when it ends at note, I'm going to go ahead and cut it and delete that portion. Now I didn't grab the rest of the storyboard, so I'm just going to chop all of it right here and zoom out. This bar down here allows me to navigate my timeline. It also allows me to zoom in and zoom out. Let's go ahead and play it real quick.
Did I hit a sour note? Wait, because if I hit a sour note.
Alright, so once you have your thumbnails laid out in your timeline along with the audio, you're going to want to export it so that you have a nice little video file that you can present on Saturday. So I'm going to go File, export media. That's also Control M on a PC. Control M, that'll open up your export settings. Now, over here in the left-hand corner, you've got source. That's going to show you what the file looks like inside Premiere. Output is what you're going to get when you export the file. For this project, go ahead and export. Oh, it doesn't show up. This is a Mac. On your PC, you're going to want to look for like Windows Media File. If you're on a Mac like this one, you're just going to want to go with QuickTime. For the preset, you're going to want to go with, on this one, NTSC widescreen 24p will be fine. You want to go with 720 HD if memory serves me correctly. But you want to go 24p so that the export will go ahead and be 24 frames per second and match your animation. The output name, I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and I'm going to name this last name underscore first name underscore ANI 245 underscore animatic, and press save. And then that's all you need to do. Just press export. And when you export, it's going to take it to the desktop. Open with QuickTime, or if you're working on a PC, open it with that video playback file.
Did I hit a sour note? Wait, because if I hit a sour note.
Yep, there it goes. It exported just fine. Alright, this was kind of a roughshod tutorial, but hopefully this answers your question on how to put together a quick animatic. Thank you guys so much for your patience, and I look forward to seeing you after Thanksgiving.